Hey everyone, Azo here, and in this video, I'll be attempting to defeat the maximum level of Stockfish on Lee Chess, Stockfish level 8. Now, I don't expect to beat it on the board, but I hear that if you reach move 151, regardless of the position, Stockfish will resign. So that's going to be my strategy here. I'm going to try to bring it to a drawn endgame, which is way harder than it sounds, and I'll try to drag it out for 150 plus moves. Now here I already think I'm winning. This is the Smith-Morra gambit accepted basically, with c5, take on d4, then taking on c3. And generally you don't want to play e5, because I can play bishop to c4 right here, and this bishop is unchallenged because the pawn cannot move to e6 and blunt the bishop. So from here on, f7 is going to be a huge target, and I'm going to try to attack it as much as I can with knight g5. And I'll probably follow up with queen f3, next move, after knight h6, which I'm guessing is the only move to defend f7. Yeah, knight h6, and then queen f3 here. This knight is surprisingly well placed on h6. I can't play rook to d1 to challenge d6 here because of bishop g4. But in any case, I'd rather castle short, put my kingside rook on d1 and my queenside rook on c1. And I don't really have time for moves like h3 to stop bishop g4, so I'm probably just going to castle here. I probably have to go back and then try the tricks with knight d5 and bishop b6. Alright, b5. Can I take on b5? Knight takes b5, a takes, bishop takes. I'm pinning and attacking the knight, so they'll probably defend and unpin it with bishop d7. And then I'll move one of the rooks to c1. I'm not sure if a2 will become a problem, but I could always move the other rook there. But at this point, the knight is defended, or rather unpinned, so you could just move away, and I don't think I have any tricks. So let's just go bishop b3 and maintain the pressure on f7. Let's go knight d5 right here. If they take on g5, I'm gonna go knight c7 and take the rook. Let's bring the knight back to d5. One of the pleasant sides of being up material is that I can afford to blunder my way into a drawn endgame. Let's go for a queen trade right here. We'll reach an endgame where I'm up a bit of material, and I'm quite confident I could reach an equal endgame from here, even though I'm winning a little bit. I wonder if I can go f4 here, then take on f7, after chasing the knight away. I'm not really sure what to calculate. I feel like I could, but on the other hand, intuitively, I think the engine would have some brilliant response in return. Also, this knight is not going to be a problem in the short term because I can just get rid of it with knight takes c8 at any point of time. Actually, why not I just do that? I'll take on c8 first, then go f4, then take on f7. Yeah, let's go f4, and I can finally take on f7. Oh, right. I think if I let black take on b2, these pawns will start marching forward and I won't be able to handle them. I'll probably just hold on to the b pawn. I don't think the f7 pawn is nearly as valuable as the b2 pawn. Okay, now I will probably take on f7. I don't think them taking the e pawn is a big deal, because the e pawn isn't really holding anyone back. It's just these double d pawns. Although, it would be nice if they would let me defend it. Yeah, bishop d5. They're holding on to the pawn. And I've played Stockfish in a number of games here, and this is the first time that I'm actually up in exchange. It's the first time I'm winning at all. So I'm quite confident that this is the one that I'm going to hold it off and get the really long endgame where I can drag it out for 151 moves. I'm thinking of going b4 here to trade some pawns, but then knight d3, I move the rook, they take on b4, then they take on d5. Yeah, I'd probably rather not take that risk here. Let's just put a rook on d1. Alright, they're attacking my pawn right here. I might just go b3. Actually, b3 might weaken the dark squares too much because of bishop c3. And my rook can't stay in touch with the e pawn because of bishop d4, pinning my rook. So I probably have to go rook d2 to defend b2 and keep the c3 square defended. Check. I'll probably go to f1. I'll be quite happy if I can trade my rook for these two and defend the b pawn somehow. And then I'm quite confident of drawing the resulting opposite bishop endgame. You know what, let's go for that. Let's go rook d1, we'll take on d3, and I'll be up one pawn in the resulting opposite bishop endgame, which I've already blundered. Okay, so we'll be in our opposite bishop endgame with equal material, because I'm going to hang the f4 pawn right now. So yeah, let's just take on d3. Knight takes, we'll take back. After everything takes off on f4, they will have the bishop on f4. And even though there are a pair of rooks on the board, I'm confident of drawing this game. Or rather, reaching an equal position where I can drag it out for 151 moves. Of course, I'll be looking to trade rooks. In fact, I see a way to do that right now. This already trades the rooks, because I can go rook f7. And I think it will be in black's best interest, because they're counter-attacking b2, that's the thing. So here I'm attacking h7. I think they will go rook e7, and if that happens, I'll immediately trade and I'll save the b pawn. Let's go a4 right here. Leave all my pawns on light squares where they can be easily defended by my light squared bishop. You know what, I'm going to play king d5 while I have the chance, now that the dark squared bishop has left this diagonal. This looks like a position I can confidently hold. My bishop will be wherever it needs to be. If it needs to defend a4, it will be on this diagonal. And if the king gets too close to g2, I'll bring my bishop over to h3, and my king has so many waiting moves. There's a second problem that I'm just now realizing. You see, we need to reach move 151 for the engine to resign. That's 95 or 96 moves away. But the thing is, before we reach that point, we need to move some pawns so that the 50 move rule won't take place. And as of right now, no captures or pawn moves can happen reasonably. So I have to figure a way around this. When was the last pawn move we had? It was move 50 as black, h4. So at move 90 something, if the engine doesn't make a pawn move or a capture, I have to be the one to sacrifice a pawn so that the game can progress. And we won't have 50 move rule but reach move 151. I'm also getting concerned about the possibility of a 3-4 repetition. You see, we have been shuffling our bishops around a lot, and I've not been keeping track of which positions have repeated and which positions have not. So I'm really banking that the engine is the one keeping track of this, and I need them to be the one to avoid the draw, keeping track of which positions have repeated. And the way I try to encourage this is to leave my king a little bit more passive and let the king advance a bit more to a more active position like f4 and g3 and all that. So if the engine evaluates itself as slightly better, like just minus 0.01, then a draw is a bad result and it's going to avoid the 3-4 hopefully. Really happy to see that the enemy bishop is exploring other diagonals to avoid the 3-4 repetition. I wonder if they'll let me take this pawn at some point just to avoid the 50 move rule. Like, not right now, but closer to move 90 something, since the last pawn move we had was move 50. Alright, to encourage black to avoid the 50 move rule and go for the d5 pawn break, I'm going to put my king on d7, and I hope this is not losing. I think it should be fine, because my bishop can defend g2 and e4 quite easily. It could slide around. And the king can't use the f4 square, where it attacks f5 and e4 and can go for the d5 pawn break to win material. So I think this is fine. Wait, actually they could go for a 3-4 repetition. They could just attack my pawns back and forth. I don't see a way to break the repetition without losing. Oh no, this is concerning. I really hope they play for the win. I'll be very upset if I draw this. Alright, awesome, they're playing for the win. You know what, just to break the repetition, just for variety, I want to put my king to defend g2 and the bishop to defend the other pawns. I hope this doesn't lose. Oh, I think I might have blundered here. The king is attacking e4 and f5. My king is not defending e4, so the threat is d5. And my bishop can't move at all. So I really found the only configuration to lose, or potentially lose. I'm in complete zugzwang. My king's got to move, and then they're going to play d5. We've got king h5, d5, king takes h4, they take our pawn, bishop g4, king e3. And I think the move here should be king to g5 to go behind the pawn, as is the rule in theoretical endgames. So we want to tie the king down to the defense of the e4 pawn. Because I mean, really, I'm going to lose a pawn no matter what, and I'm just trying to calculate the best way to do so. Actually, I might have found a better way. Bishop c8, they take. Then we go either king g5 or king h5. I'm not sure it makes a difference. Anyway, they defend their pawn. Then we go king to g4. And when they push the pawn, we pin it. And the idea is, wherever the king moves to break the pin, whether d4 or e5, it will allow me to go king f3. And my king will be back in the game, and we're going to easily draw this. The arrows were a bit messy, so you'll see what I mean in a moment. They take. And I think it doesn't make a difference. Let's go king g5. Because I'm thinking if moving to h5, which is a light square, matters, but I think I'd rather shoulder the king. Okay, bishop g3. We'll continue with king g4 as planned. And yeah, I think we're doing just fine. d5, we're going bishop b7. And you see, the idea is that the only way to break this spin without hanging a pawn is for black to go to d4 or e5, both of which allow me to go king f3 and then just slide right in front of the pawn. Now, an additional detail to note is that we have to reach move 151 while ensuring 50 move rule doesn't happen. So in the triple digits, there has to be some kind of pawn move, and it's actually up to black to make that pawn move. So now that we are still in the 90s, I want to put my king ideally on d3 for the time being, then let the pawn push later on when we are in the triple digits, and then we will avoid the 50 move rule. Alright, we're in the triple digits now, so anytime I'll be happy if they could push a pawn or something, avoid the 50 move rule, and let me get the win at move 151. At this point, if I lose, it's just such a good learning experience that I wouldn't mind. Alright, we have reached move 104 where there's a pawn move, so we can just shuffle around for a bunch of moves and get the win. Alright, we have reached move 110, so we've got 40 more moves to survive. And now that the king is going after my g2 pawn, I'm going to be protecting it on this diagonal. The only thing is I can't step on f3 because then h3 comes. You know, I wonder if the engine knows that it's going to resign at move 151 and it would therefore play for a draw in the moves leading up to that point. We've got 23 more moves to go. And I'm very happy to see that they have pushed the pawn, so it adds some variety. We are avoiding a 3-4. And you know, this actually gives me a new way to blunder. I could go bishop e2 and then king f2 comes, and the only way to defend g2 is on f3, but then h3 comes. Although I could take on d2, but I'd rather not mess around with that. I've played way too many games, and this is the best chance I've ever had. So let's just play normal chess. You guys, I just found a new way to blunder. So if I defend g2 with bishop h3, they could make a waiting move of sorts, like say bishop g5. So I have to move my king away from the front of the pawn. They go king e1, threaten the queen. Then I have to go bishop g4 to stop them from queening. Then they make another waiting move with their bishop. Then they go to... Well, they make a waiting move with their bishop so that I have to move my bishop away from g4. Then they move their king to f2 and I don't have bishop h3. I have to go to f3 and they go h3. So absolutely ingenious. And I have to go bishop b7. I have lost to the engine in so many drawn endgames. I could probably write a whole chessable course on how to win drawn endgames. Alright, we're so close. We're reaching move 134 next move. Once again, I'm going to trust that the engine will conscientiously avoid repetition here, keep track of the positions, and move to squares the bishop has not visited yet. I'd really be devastated here if I suddenly found out that this was a draw by repetition when I'm just on the cusp of reaching move 151. At this point, I could probably afford to blunder because I don't think the computer could mate me in 10 moves by move 151. I was very tempted to blunder there on purpose just to prove my point, but on deeper reflection, I'd rather not take that risk. You know, I'm seriously considering doing that now that I think about it. Just want to show the engine resigning in a losing position. You know what, just for content here, I'm going to play g4, let them en passant. I'll let them en passant. I don't think I'll get mated in 5 moves or so. So I'll just play on from here. We just need to not get mated so quickly and I'll win this game by resignation. You know, I wonder if the engine detects mate, would they just go for the mate and not resign even if it's move 151? Whereas they would have gone ahead and resigned if the position was drawn. That would have been a really stupid way to lose here with g4. Okay, it's time for the moment of truth. Alright. Black resigned, white is victorious. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this video. This took me a really long time to film. I was losing tons of games to the engine, losing tons of drawn endgames just like this one. And so I really appreciate if you sticking with me till the end. If you liked it, please leave a like, subscribe, maybe check out some of my other videos and see if any of them interest you. So yep, thank you so much once again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.